Human trafficking is the third largest and fastest growing criminal industry in the world. In Sri Lanka too, it poses a threat. The country is known to be a source and destination for trafficked persons, for forced labor and sexual exploitation. An event in Colombo recently assessed a counter-trafficking program that was implemented over the past 18 months by the International Organization for Migration. Trafficking in persons is described as the recruitment, transportation, transfer, harboring or receipt of persons by means of threat or use of force or other forms of coercion to achieve the consent of a person having control over another person for the purpose of exploitation. Sri Lanka has long been a source and destination country for men and women who are trafficked for involuntary labor and commercial sexual exploitation. Many Sri Lankans willingly migrate as workers to other countries and often find themselves in situations of involuntary labor, faced with restrictions, threat and vulnerable to physical and sexual abuse. Children too are trafficked internally for commercial sexual exploitation and less frequently for forced labor. They have also been forcibly recruited as child combatants by the LTTE and other paramilitary groups. In an attempt to combat trafficking, the International Organization for Migration in Sri Lanka has implemented an 18-month program to strengthen the capacity of the government and the NGO sector to better address the issue. A meeting in Colombo addressed their progress and achievements.
The IOM Sri Lanka Counter-Trafficking Unit has, during the last 1.5 years, successfully implemented capacity building programs for law enforcement officers to help identify, investigate and prosecute cases of trafficking, and on legislation and victim protection. Recognizing the importance of these training programs for police officers throughout the island on human trafficking, the counter-trafficking team has traveled to many districts, training police officers.
IOM's counter-trafficking program included capacity building of law enforcement officers and NGO workers in providing services and raising awareness of trafficking issues, and was funded by USAID and the US State Department.
In 2008, the US State Department issued a report that described Sri Lanka as a country of origin and destination for men, women and children who are trafficked. The report specifically noted the problem of recruitment agents, which again, you're all familiar with, who knowingly, in some cases, who knowingly and for profit place individuals in situations where they will be exploited. The report also noted that governmental organizations here in Sri Lanka have the will, but sometimes not the capacity or resources to prevent trafficking, both internal and external.
We're trying to get governments and NGOs talking to each other. IOM are playing a big part in that. We're getting different agencies, departments and organisations within countries working together. In the past, many countries, including my own, have always had a tendency for police, customs, immigration, security services and defence to totally have their own agendas and priorities. This is no longer the case. Human trafficking ticks a lot of boxes for all of these organisations. We've amended legislation with tougher sentences to deter traffickers. We need to hit the traffickers where it hurts, and that is often in their pockets.
Over the past 1.5 years, the IOM programs has trained over 500 police officers and other stakeholders on how to identify, investigate and prosecute traffickers. The police have also established a Children's and Women's Bureau to extend their focus to the victims of trafficking.
IOM also arranged several study tours, and one of them was to the United States to observe and learn how the law enforcement agencies function in relation to human trafficking, and learn the best practices concerning prevention of combating human trafficking.
The IOM program has been able to strengthen the capacity of many organizations. especially those who work with vulnerable groups like migrant workers or displaced communities.
We were able to understand, not only by the state parties, we were able to identify and discuss in length the services extended by the private sector and independent organization, not only in arresting the trafficking but in rehabilitating the victims as well as to ensure the safety of the witnesses as well. At the end of the session, we were able to think beyond the traditional definitions of human trafficking.
எங்களுக்கு புத்தள மாவட்டத்தில் இடம்பெயர்ந்த உள்ளூர் மக்கள் நிறைந்து வாழ்கின்ற ஒரு பிரதேசமாகவும் மிகவும் வறுமை கோட்டுக்கு கீழே வாழ்கின்ற பிரதேசமாக இருக்கின்றபடியினால் டிராஃபிக்கிங்க்கு உட்படுற மக்களோட வீதம் மிகவும் கூடுதலாக காணப்பட்டது. 3 மாதத்துக்குள்ள 60 கேசஸ்களை நாங்கள் அடையாளம் காணக்கூடியதாக இருந்தது. டிராஃபிக்கிங்க்கு உட்பட்ட கேசஸ்கள் இவர்கள் இந்த நாங்கள் வழங்கப்பட்ட இந்த அசிஸ்டன்ட் மூலமாக இந்த டிராஃபிக்கிங்கில் பாதிக்கப்பட்டவர்கள் அடுத்த கட்டத்தில் என்ன செய்கிறதுன்னு தெரியாத நிலையில் நாங்கள் செய்த இந்த அசிஸ்டன்ட் உதவிகள் மூலமாக அவர்கள் இப்பொழுது ஒரு சந்தோஷமான நிலையிலும் அவர்களுடைய எதிர்காலத்தில் நல்ல ஒரு வருமானத்தை ஏற்படுத்தக்கூடிய வகையில் அவர்கள் செயல்பட்டு வருகின்றார்கள்.
In Sri Lanka, legal provisions on trafficking of persons were introduced to the Penal Code by way of an amendment in 2006. The term trafficking is used to denote the buying, selling and bartering of persons. So although there are existing laws and conventions to deal with trafficking, these are usually ineffective when it comes to enactment. Institutional strengthening is an important factor in the prevention of trafficking in Sri Lanka. That is why the IOM implemented counter-trafficking programs that will contribute towards building the capacity in Sri Lanka. As we have seen today, the basic human rights of so many Sri Lankans have been threatened and violated. But the people are trying to cope and develop ways to combat the challenges. And that is a step in the right direction. If you have any comments about the show, please write to us at nowarzone@ertv.net. Thank you for watching. Until next week, you take care.